Special contract, Indian Contract Act, Quasi Contracts, Quantum Merit, Principle behind relations resembling contracts, Supply of necessaries to a person incapable of entering into a contract, Supplier entitled to be reimbursed from the property, Payment by interested person entitled to be reimbursed by one who was bound to pay for non-gratuitous acts, responsibility of person who enjoys the benefit, Finder of goods takes responsibility as a bailee, benefit received under mistake or coercion, returnable or repayable, bailment, delivery of goods for some purpose upon a contract, and when the purpose is accomplished, to be returned or otherwise disposed of as per directions of the person delivering them. Delivery has to put the goods in possession of the bailee. Faults to be disclosed, more particularly when bailed for hire, bailee to take care as a man of ordinary prudence. Any inconsistent act against the bailed goods renders the contract voidable. Unauthorized use makes compensation payable to the bailer. In mixed products, proportionate interest of both bailer and bailee possible. Mixture without bailer's consent becomes responsibility of the bailee to separate. If it cannot be separated, bailee to compensate for loss of goods. Necessary expenses incurred by the bailee need to be reimbursed. Things lent gratuitously can be claimed back ahead of time. Bailee's responsibility to return the goods on expiry of bailment. Any delay, bailee will be responsible. Return should be with any increase or profit which may have accrued from the goods bailed. Finder of goods can retain the goods against the owner till he receives compensation. He can also claim the reward if announced. If owner not found or refuses to pay charges, the finder has the option to sell subject to conditions. For service rendered, bailee can exercise a lien till he receives the proceeds. Finder of goods under section 71 becomes a bailee literally to protect, not to mix, search and find the owner, return the goods found, else liable for conversion under section 403. Pledge is a bailment as a security for payment of debt. Respective parties, pawner is the bailer, pawnee is the bailee. Pawnee can retain the goods pledged for payment, interest and expenses. Pawnee's right is restricted to the specific transaction and reduced therefrom. Any extraordinary expenses incurred by pawnee for preservation are payable. Default, pawnee has the right to sell the things pledged following the procedure. Shortfall recoverable, surplus due to pawner. Pawner in default can reclaim before actual sale by paying the extra expenses. Agency of acting for another or representing another in dealings with third parties. Person represented is called principal. Principal has to be of the age of majority and of sound mind. Agent can include a minor and a person of unsound mind with responsibility to principal. Agency doesn't require a consideration separately. Express or implied authority. Authority to do every lawful thing necessary under the arrangement of agency. Agent cannot delegate further unless required by the ordinary custom of trade, that is appointment of subagent. Subagent under control of the original agent. Subagent represents principal, but he is answerable to agent except in case of fraud and willful wrong. Substituted agent reports to the principal. Ratification dates back to the origin under doctrine of relating back. Subject to process, complete ratification, no injury to third person. Agent personally liable for foreign principal, unnamed principal, undisclosed principal, incompetent principal, and where there is a agent acting in excess of authority or pretending to be an agent. Agent's duty to follow the directions of the principal, use reasonable diligence, compensate for neglect or want of skill, render accounts, communicate properly, not to deal on own account. Principal to indemnify for acts done in good faith, compensate for injury caused by principal's neglect. An agent may retain all monies due to him for advances, expenses and remuneration, and he has got the lien to retain goods, papers and other property until amount has been paid to him. When agent exceeds authority, if it can be separated, then principal will be bound for the separated part. If it cannot be separated, it will be agent's personal responsibility. Any notice given to the agent in the course of business is notice to the principal. Agency can be terminated by the principal or by the agent, or when the business is completed, or with the death of principal or agent, or one of them becoming unsound mind. Where agent has an interest, termination cannot prejudice such interest. Otherwise, principal may revoke any time before the authority has been exercised. Revocation after partial exercising is not permitted. Revocation attracts compensation from either party when there is an express or implied contract to that effect. Revocation and renunciation can be with notice reasonable, and it takes effect when it becomes known to either the agent or third parties in relation to their specific liability. Indemnity, a contract to save one from the loss caused to him by the contract of the promisor or conduct of any other person. Promisee can recover damages, costs and all sums paid under any compromise. It is not a reimbursement, it is to be paid first hand. Guarantee, to perform a promise or discharge the liability of a third person on his default. It may be a continuing guarantee extending to a series of transactions, revocable for future transactions by notice. Surety is the person giving the guarantee. Principal debtor who has taken the money. Creditor, no additional consideration required for surety. Existing benefit received by the principal debtor is good enough. Surety's liability with that of the principal debtor. Surety liable to pay full amount. Variation of terms entitles surety to withdraw his consent. Release or discharge of principal debtor, also surety eligible for withdrawing his consent. Making a composition with the creditor also enables surety to get discharged. No act could impair surety's eventual remedy, else he can have discharge. Surety has the right to be entitled to the benefit of every security once he performs the part of principal debtor. Guarantee is invalid when it is obtained under misrepresentation or concealment. Principal debtor is under obligation to indemnify surety. Co-sureties can set limits at inception and contribute. Subject to that, death of surety is revocation for future. Indemnity versus guarantee. Indemnity saves from loss. Guarantee, performance of a promise of an existing debt. Indemnity associated with insurance. Guarantee related to debt and borrowing. I will see you paid is indemnity wording. I will pay if PD doesn't pay is of surety. Indemnifier, primarily responsible. Principal debtor primary, surety secondary. Two parties under indemnification, three parties under surety and guarantee. Contracts, one contract, indemnifier and indemnified parties. Three contracts, tripartite, creditor, principal debtor and surety. Indemnifier is stranger to contract, but surety is very much a part of contract, can sue third parties in his own name. E-contracts, executed by software system. Speed, reliability, digital signature. IT Act 2000. covered under Traditional Contracts Acts and other laws. Contingent contracts, to do or not to do something if some event, collateral, does or does not happen. Contingent event does happen. If event becomes impossible, contract becomes void. Contingent event does not happen. When event becomes impossible, can be enforced. Agreement dependent on an impossible event is void.
Are agreements. All agreements need not be contracts. Maximum number of parties in a contract may be infinite. A contract is a combination of agreement and enforceability. A contract where the parties exchange a promise for a promise is known as a bilateral contract. Proposal is also called an offer. A contract creates jus in personam. Communication is essential to constitute an offer or acceptance. Consideration is of three types: executory, executed, or past. Any promise not supported by consideration does not give rise to a valid contract. Doctrine of privity of contract relates to Contract Act, strangers to a contract. Silence on the part of the offeree does not amount to acceptance. A proposal may be revoked anytime before the communication of acceptance. A person is said to be of sound mind for the purpose of making a contract if at the time when he makes it, he is capable of understanding it. Anu threatens to kidnap Binu's daughter if she does not sell her house worth rupees 90 lakhs for rupees 20 lakhs. This is an instance of absence of free consent. Coercion is committing any act which is forbidden by the Indian Penal Code. Consensus ad idem means identity of minds, agreeing same thing in the same way. P purchases goods from S, he has no intention of paying for it. The agreement is affected by fraud. When a consent is caused by undue influence, the agreement is voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so caused. Misrepresentation must relate to some fact which is material to the contract. Ankit agrees to pay Beena rupees 1500 if it rains today. Otherwise, Beena pays Ankit rupees 2000. This is a wagering contract. Agreements of wager are void. The main features of e-contract, which are paperless, is speed, accuracy, and reliability. Doctrine of frustration relates to Indian Contract Act. By cancellation is a method of discharge from liability. A breach of contract may be actual or anticipatory. A breach of contract is not a discharge by operation of law. Merger, insolvency, or unauthorized alteration of a written document result in discharge by operation of law. An agreement which is impossible is void. Remission means acceptance of a lesser performance than what is actually due under the contract. A person employed to do any act for another or to represent another in dealing with the third person is called agent. No consideration is necessary to create an agency. The termination of the authority of an agent causes the termination of the authority of all sub-agents appointed by him. The sub-agent is responsible for his act to the agent and not to the principal. A person may become an agent even if he is not of the age of majority or even if he is of unsound mind. The ratification may be express or implied in the conduct of the person on whose behalf the acts are done. In a contract of guarantee, there is an existing debt for which the surety gives guarantee to the creditor on behalf of the principal debtor. In a contract of guarantee, three parties are necessary. The person in respect of whose default the guarantee is given is called principal debtor. The surety gives guarantee at the request of the principal debtor. Liability of surety is secondary. The liability of surety arises only when the principal debtor fails to pay the debt to the creditor. In every contract of guarantee, there is an implied promise by the principal debtor to indemnify the surety. Continuing guarantee is a guarantee which extends to a series of transactions. If the bailee does any act with regard to the goods bail which are inconsistent with the conditions of the bailment, the contract of bailment is voidable at the option of the bailer. Gratuitous bailment ends with the death of either of the bailer or the bailee. The pawnee is entitled to receive from the pawner extraordinary expenses incurred by him for the preservation of the goods pledged. Claim for necessaries supplied to a person incapable of contracting or on his account is a quasi contract. Also, quantum merit is also a claim under quasi contract. Reimbursement of persons paying money due from another in payment of which he is interested is a quasi contract. Responsibility of finder of goods is under a quasi contract.